Apocalypse Now is primarily known as two things: a near-perfect encapsulation of a moment in time, and one of the great novel-to-film adaptations. By happy coincidence, these aspects also make up the text and subtext of the film, respectively. They are so finely crafted as to almost blur the lines of fiction and non-fiction. That is to say, Apocalypse Now documents so well individual recreations that are strung together with the themes presented in the original Heart of Darkness. I want to break down these facets to understand the film that much better. This is what it all meant. Almost episodic in nature, especially the 2001 Redux version in which I'm pulling from primarily, the film catalogs what I would call in a blanketing fashion the horrors of war into one cohesive package. We are guided through a host of scenarios that feature such detail that one could almost use the film in reference to an index of the subject. An example, the first scene depicts what a post-service lifestyle can be, often described as just another circle of the hell a soldier goes through during wartime. Post-service has now become synonymous with PTSD, which in turn gives one the image of paranoia. Willard, our guide through the film, is one such sufferer, an apparent addict who underwent operations he isn't even allowed to discuss, let alone manage to cope with. You could make the argument that many other war films capture events in a similar fashion, and you would definitely be correct. I'd argue that Apocalypse Now is a bit more exhaustive than even its conflict-specific peers, however. The flowing nature of the journey downriver makes for a natural movement through events. The reasons for stopping become less important, as you accept the ultimate goal, while each stop then becomes a fairly self-contained event. This type of storytelling can be frustrating, as it tends to lower the overall stakes. However, the lavish depictions of Apocalypse Now are some of the greatest I know. While more exciting than any textbook I've had the displeasure of reading from cover to cover, Apocalypse Now jumps from scenes the way a history textbook would jump chapters. We flip the page from a chapter on distrust of administration to a chaotically breathtaking display of visceral combat flow, while at the same time given subheadings that address hotly debated topics like modern media coverage or the indifference to the destruction of nature, topics that are associated with combat at that time. Though presenting the civilian interference adds to the plot, most of the information given to us in this bombastic scene is in essence pointless. Yet, Sergeant Kilgore now stands as a symbol of military brashness, much in the same way that a simplified textbook's use of a single real person to address a widespread mentality can make that person synonymous with such ideas. Now, I don't want to undersell the more artistic merits of the film. The use of, say, a popular breed of dog heavily associated with a basic American dream during a scene involving innocent civilian casualties is not unimportant to me. However, the retrospective quality of scenes in the ilk of the conversation with a French family whose situation predates the war is fascinating, while being objectively pointless. It essentially acts as a history lesson for general conflict and the backdrop of this specific war, but adds nothing to the plot, hence its exclusion from the original cut. As much as I love this type of storytelling, I understand people's hatred of the contextually pointless. While I won't broadly discredit any given scene, there is still a more straight through line that I want to cover, which goes hand in hand with discussing the basis for the film, Heart of Darkness. Traversal downriver is a strong metaphor in both Heart of Darkness and Apocalypse Now. These waterways are painted as veins being clogged by horrors near inconceivable to supposedly civilized creatures. Veins that lead to that zenith of pure malicious intent. A heart of darkness, if you will. The symbolic nature of water as life-bringing source of prosperity that pushed humanity further is used so perfect with this backdrop. As objective as both works try to be with the players and situations of the moment, it's hard not to view what's harbored on the shores of the Congo and Vietnam as calling cards to the apocalypse. which can be exemplified not just in full destruction, but also in the breakdown of humanity. Or to continue the analogy, it's hard not to view what's clogging the metaphorical veins as an indicator of extremely poor health, verging on some sort of death. If we were to be objective though, were those veins clear in the first place? In the film, this question becomes interesting when we consider the surfer character. We don't get a whole lot of backstory, but we do witness a relatively relaxed, civilized man descend into a sort of primal nature. In the context of the film, it seems like a believable chain of events. Being thrust into those horrors of war creates a need for escape that is met with dissociation. Early on, he breaks his sense of self with drugs, but at the end of the film, he fully involves himself in the primal display. In the novella and film, the primitive citizens are portrayed as being driven by impulse, lending to the idea that an outsider could join in by giving in as well. It's here that I wonder, was the surfer giving in to something different to what he had witnessed before? Is violence not violence regardless of reason? Were the veins of humanity ever clear to begin with if our impulses are of a violent or subjugating nature? Heart of Darkness has fairly clear closure. Marlowe comes to believe that any given society is only sustainable through self-control, fear, and social norms. He views his journey as a reminder of a cyclical, perpetual collapse. He also decides that people don't need to know this information, as it may only hurt people, hence his decision not to tell the late Kurt's wife. Apocalypse Now does not have this conclusion. The novella uses a statuesque figure to show an aged Marlowe as transcendent but hardened. The film has imagery to imply a similar idea, but without any indication of that former quality. If anything, Willard's actions at the very end and his previous post-service lifestyle implies he may repeat his own cycle of violence. He already felt guilty about his previous tour. Why would he not see his actions and Kurt's beliefs as a pseudo-confession of mankind? This seems like an exceptionally negative outlook, I know. But if the difference in the two endings says nothing else, it's in how we deal with information that shows character. Remember, this ending is inside what I called a retrospective on the horrors of war. This pure negativity could be directed at the cogs of war, less so the machine of society as a whole. The horror that caused this version of Kurtz to call out in fear may be an aspect of humanity rather than the full extent of it. He may have only seen the apocalypse that occurs every time we take up arms against our fellow human. Or maybe Joseph Conrad was pulling his punches. Thank you. If it's not obvious, I adore unique films. That's why I'm proud to be sponsored by Mubi. Mubi is an online cinema streaming exceptional movies from around the globe. They offer 30 amazing independent, international, and classic selections at a time. Every day they present a new film, and every day they take one away. Ruthless, yet wonderfully simple. No more endless scrolling, no more of the same old thing. No more stressful eye movements through thousands of random titles. Finally, a streaming service that is, above all, streamlined. I would currently recommend Werewolf. It's part of a 10-film program designed to showcase blossoming young directors from Canada. Try Mubi with an extended free trial by visiting mubi.com/whatitallmeant. That's mubi.com/whatitallmeant.